My wife told me her parents were seriously ill and needed someone to stay with them. Because I had an important meeting that morning, my daughter volunteered to go with her. I trusted them completely. Why wouldn't I? They left together in a rush, and I stayed behind believing my family was doing the right thing. But an uneasy feeling wouldn't leave me, so I decided to drive there unannounced. When I quietly stepped inside the house, I almost passed out. What I witnessed wasn't care or concern. It was a cold, calculated betrayal involving the two people I loved most. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just a lie. It was the beginning of the end of everything I believed in. Thank you so much for being here with me. Before I begin sharing the story of my family, I'd love to know more about you. Please take a moment to leave a comment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are right now? Your presence truly matters to me. Also, please note this story includes some fictional elements added for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or settings is purely coincidental, but the message I'm sharing here is meant to be useful. The rain had started just after dawn, a soft, persistent drizzle that blurred the edges of everything outside our windows. I sat at the kitchen table in our home on Oak Ridge Drive, watching droplets race down the glass, while Betty moved around the kitchen with her usual efficiency. The smell of fresh coffee and scrambled eggs filled the air. Audrey was scrolling through her phone, occasionally laughing at something on her screen. It was ordinary, perfectly, beautifully ordinary. Dad, did you see this article about the new waterfront development? Audrey looked up from her phone, her green eyes bright with interest. They're saying it could bring in thousands of new jobs. I nodded, sipping my coffee. The firm's been tracking that project. We might bid on the accounting contract. Betty set a plate of toast in front of me, her hand briefly touching my shoulder. You've got that big client meeting today, right? The tech startup. Yeah, Tech Vista. They're looking to expand, need someone to handle their books as they scale up. I glanced at the clock. Meeting's at 11, should be straightforward. Audrey pushed her eggs around her plate. I've got that project deadline at the marketing agency. My boss is being impossible about the timeline, but her words were cut off by the sharp ring of Betty's phone. I watched my wife's face as she answered. Mom, what's wrong? The transformation was instant. The color drained from Betty's cheeks. Her hand gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles going white. When did this start? Betty's voice rose with panic. How high is his fever? I was on my feet before I realized I'd moved. Audrey had set down her phone, her face mirroring her mother's concern. Okay. I'm coming. Right now. Betty's hand trembled as she lowered the phone. When she looked at me, tears were pooling in her eyes. Joseph, it's Dad. He's running a fever of 103. And Mom, she's having severe chest pains. She can barely breathe. My stomach dropped. Walter and Mildred were in their 80s. Any serious illness at their age could be. I didn't want to finish that thought. I'm coming with you. I was already reaching for my keys. No. Betty shook her head firmly. You have that meeting with Tech Vista. It's important for your career. I'll be fine. I'll just drive to Salem, make sure they're okay. Maybe take them to the hospital if needed. Betty, your parents are more important than any meeting. I'll go with Mom. Audrey stood up, already pulling her hair back into a ponytail. Grandma and Grandpa need both of us there. You handle your meeting, Dad. We've got this. I looked at my daughter, my smart, caring, beautiful daughter, and felt a surge of pride. Even in a crisis, she knew what mattered. Family, always family. Are you sure? I looked between them. Betty was already gathering her purse. Her movements quick and efficient, despite the fear in her eyes. We're sure. You've worked so hard for this opportunity, Joseph. We'll call you as soon as we get there and assess the situation. Audrey grabbed her jacket from the back of her chair. Don't worry, Dad. We'll take care of them. I pulled them both into a hug. Betty's perfume, the same lavender scent she'd worn for 30 years, wrapped around me. Audrey squeezed my hand. "She'll call me the moment you get there," I said. "I don't care if I'm in the middle of the meeting, and if they need to go to the hospital, I'm driving straight to Salem. We will." Betty kissed my cheek. "I love you." "Love you too, Dad." Audrey was already heading for the door. I stood in the doorway watching their car pull out of the driveway. Betty's silver sedan disappeared around the corner, taillights blinking red through the rain. The house felt wrong without them. I walked back to the kitchen, poured myself another cup of coffee, and sat down at the empty table. The eggs had gone cold. Audrey's phone charger was still plugged into the wall. Betty's reading glasses sat on the counter next to her half-finished crossword puzzle. I picked up my own phone, scrolled through my calendar. The Tech Vista meeting. A follow-up call with another client at 2. Dinner plans with the Johnsons on Saturday that would need to be canceled if Walter and Mildred's situation was serious. But something felt off. I couldn't explain it. Couldn't point to any specific detail that seemed wrong. Maybe it was the way Betty had grabbed her purse a little too quickly. Maybe it was how Audrey had volunteered to go along a little too eagerly. Maybe it was just the fear talking, the ancient instinct that whispers warnings when the people you love are in danger. I walked into the living room, stood in front of the mantel where our family photos were displayed. Betty and me on our wedding day, both of us impossibly young. Audrey graduating from college, her smile radiant under the mortarboard. The three of us on vacation in Cannon Beach, wind-whipping our hair as we laughed at something I couldn't remember anymore. 24 years of marriage. 24 years of building a life together. A daughter we'd raised with love and care. In-laws who'd welcomed me into their family from the very beginning. Everything I'd ever wanted was in those photos. So why did I feel like I was standing on the edge of something dark and vast? I checked my watch. 10:15. The Tech Vista meeting was in 45 minutes. I should get going, prep my materials, review the proposal one more time. But I couldn't shake the feeling. I pulled up Betty's contact on my phone, hesitated with my thumb over the call button. She'd barely had time to get on the highway. Calling her now would just make me look paranoid, worried over nothing. I set the phone down. Then I picked it up again. This was stupid. They were fine. Betty and Audrey were handling a family emergency, and I was sitting here inventing problems that didn't exist. I made a decision. I walked to the hall closet, grabbed my jacket, and picked up my car keys. I'd stop by the florist on the way, grab some flowers for Mildred. Maybe pick up some medicine at the pharmacy, fever reducers, pain relievers, whatever might help. Then I'd drive to Salem, check on Walter and Mildred myself, make sure everything was under control. The Tech Vista meeting could wait. They'd understand. Family came first. I was pulling out of the driveway 20 minutes later, a bouquet of white lilies on the passenger seat, next to a bag from the pharmacy. The rain had picked up, drumming against the windshield in a steady rhythm. I didn't know it then, but I was driving toward the end. The end of my marriage. The end of my trust. The end of the man I'd been for 56 years. 2 hours later, I would stand on Walter and Mildred's doorstep with flowers in my hand and watch my entire world collapse. But in that moment, driving through the rain with the radio playing softly, I still believed the lie. I still believed in the perfect family I thought I had. I'd been driving for 45 minutes, the windshield wipers keeping rhythm with my thoughts, as rain continued to fall across Interstate 5. The highway stretched south through gray landscape farmland and scattered trees blurring past my windows. I kept thinking about Mildred and Walter. They'd been part of my life for 24 years, since the day I'd nervously asked Walter's permission to marry his daughter. He'd looked at me over his reading glasses, stern, for exactly 3 seconds, before breaking into a smile and shaking my hand so hard I thought my arm might fall off. "Welcome to the family, son." That's what he'd called me. Son. Mildred had been just as welcoming. Every Thanksgiving, she'd make her famous apple pie specifically because she knew it was my favorite. Every Christmas, she'd slip me an extra piece of fudge when Betty wasn't looking, with a conspiratorial wink. Good people, kind people. And now, at 80 and 78 years old, they were facing serious illness, maybe worse. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Walter was 80. At that age, any illness could turn critical fast. A high fever could become pneumonia. Chest pains could mean I didn't want to think about it. I'd stopped at a small grocery store about 10 miles back, picked up a bouquet of white lilies, Mildred's favorite. Then I'd swung by a pharmacy, grabbed fever reducers, pain medication, anything that might help until they could get proper medical attention. The pharmacist had given me a sympathetic look when I'd explained the situation. Hope they feel better soon. Thank you. Me too. Now, as I took the exit for Salem, the rain seemed to intensify. The sky was the color of old steel, heavy with clouds, that promised the weather wasn't going to improve anytime soon. I navigated through familiar streets. Betty and I had made this drive countless times over the years, birthday parties, holiday gatherings, random Sunday visits just because. I knew every turn, every stoplight. Sycamore Street appeared on my right. I turned, drove 3 blocks, and there it was. 847 Sycamore Street. A modest single-story house with cream-colored siding and dark green shutters. A small, neatly maintained lawn stretched to the sidewalk. Walter's old pickup truck sat in the driveway, and the front gate was standing wide open. My foot eased off the gas pedal. That wasn't right. Walter and Mildred always kept that gate closed. Always. Walter had installed it himself 15 years ago, after a neighbor's dog had gotten into their yard and dug up Mildred's rose bushes. He was religious about keeping it latched, but today it stood open, swinging slightly in the breeze. I pulled past the house and parked about 30 yards down the street next to a large oak tree. Some instinct I couldn't name told me not to park right in front, not to announce my arrival. I sat there for a moment, engine running, wipers still going. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I could see the house clearly. Lights were on inside. No signs of distress, no ambulance, no frantic activity that you'd expect if 2 elderly people were seriously ill. I turned off the engine, grabbed the flowers and the pharmacy bag, opened the car door and stepped into the rain. The walk to the house felt longer than it should have. Each step seemed to echo too loud against the wet pavement. My shoes squelched softly on the damp grass as I crossed the yard. That's when I heard it, a television. Playing clearly enough that I could make out the enthusiastic voice of a game show host, followed by audience laughter and applause. I stopped walking. Sick people didn't watch game shows. People with 103-degree fevers and severe chest pains didn't sit around watching television. They were in bed, in pain. Maybe on their way to the emergency room, but not watching game shows. My heart started beating faster. I moved closer to the house, staying quiet. The front door was slightly ajar, just a crack, but enough that I could see into the dim hallway beyond. I reached out, pushed the door open a few more inches. It moved silently on well-oiled hinges. The interior of the house looked normal. Mildred's collection of ceramic figurines lined the shelf in the hallway. Walter's jacket hung on the coat rack. The familiar smell of the house, a mixture of old wood vanilla candles, and the faint scent of the lavender sachets Mildred kept everywhere wrapped around me. I stepped inside, moving as quietly as I could, set the flowers and the pharmacy bag down on the small table near the entrance. My hands were shaking slightly, though I couldn't have said exactly why. The television was louder now. I could hear it clearly from what I knew was the living room just down the hall and to the right. And underneath the TV noise I could hear voices. Talking, not moaning in pain, not crying out for help, just talking. Normally, casually. I moved down the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone in the house could hear it. Each footstep felt like thunder, even though I was walking on carpet. The living room doorway was ahead of me on the right. The voices were clearer now. One of them was Walter's distinctive baritone, slightly raspy with age. The other was Mildred's softer tone. I reached the doorway, looked inside, and my entire world tilted sideways. Mildred was sitting on the sofa, a plate of cookies on her lap, watching the television with obvious enjoyment. She was wearing her favorite purple cardigan, the one she always wore when she was comfortable and happy. No sign of chest pains, no difficulty breathing. She reached for another cookie, took a bite, and laughed at something on the screen. Walter sat in his recliner, his kingdom as he called it, with the morning newspaper spread across his lap. Reading glasses perched on his nose. No fever, no illness. He looked up at the TV, chuckled at whatever joke had just been made, then went back to his paper. Both of them were perfectly, completely, undeniably healthy. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Betty had lied to me. The words kept repeating in my mind over and over. Betty had lied to me. There was no emergency, no sick parents, no crisis that required her and Audrey to drop everything and drive to Salem. So why were they here? As if answering my unspoken question, I heard Betty's voice drift from somewhere deeper in the house, from the direction of the kitchen. "I needs to move faster," she was saying. "We can't keep waiting." Then Audrey's voice, "I know, Mom, but we have to be careful. If he finds out before we're ready, he won't." Betty's tone was firm, certain. "Joseph trusts us completely. He always has." My legs felt weak. They weren't talking about medicine. They weren't discussing doctor's appointments or hospital visits or any kind of medical care. They were talking about money, my money, and they were talking about me. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and started recording. I needed proof. I needed to know this nightmare was real. My fingers fumbled with the screen. The recording app icon seemed impossibly small, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tap it. Finally, the red dot appeared. Recording. I held the phone up, moving as quietly as I could toward the kitchen doorway. Each step felt dangerous, like walking through a minefield. One creak of the floorboards, one shadow falling wrong, and they'd know I was here. I pressed myself against the wall just outside the kitchen entrance. Close enough to hear every word, hidden enough that they couldn't see me. My heart hammered so loud I was certain they'd hear it. Betty's voice came through clearly. "Did you transfer the $3,000 this week?" "Done this morning, Mom." Audrey sounded casual, like she was discussing grocery shopping. "Dad never checks the statements anyway." "$3,000? This week?" Meaning this wasn't the first time. "What's the total now?" Betty asked. A pause. Then Audrey. $234,000. Just a few more months and we'll have enough. The number hit me like a physical blow. $234,000. Nearly $250,000. Gone. Stolen. By my wife and daughter. My vision blurred. I pressed harder against the wall, needing something solid to keep me upright. "Are you sure he won't notice?" Betty's voice carried a hint of worry. Audrey laughed. Actually laughed. "Dad's a financial advisor, but he's so busy with his clients that he never looks at his own accounts. It's actually kind of funny when you think about it." "Funny," she thought destroying me was funny. "Sometimes I still feel guilty," Betty began. "Don't." Audrey cut her off, voice turning cold. "He's ignored our emotional needs for years. You deserve this. We both deserve this." Each word was a knife. Each sentence carved something away from me that I'd never get back. I'd ignored their emotional needs. I thought about every birthday party I'd thrown for Audrey, every dance recital I'd attended, every parent-teacher conference, every late night, helping her with homework, teaching her to drive, being there when she got her heart broken the first time. I thought about Betty. 24 years of marriage. 24 years of working hard to provide for our family, of building a life together, of thinking we were happy. Had I missed something? Had I been blind to their unhappiness? Or was this just the story they'd told themselves to justify what they were doing? "The transfers have been smooth," Audrey continued. "I've been spreading them across 3 different accounts. Even if he did check, which he won't, it would just look like normal spending patterns. You've been so smart about this, honey." I learned from the best mom. They sounded proud, like they were discussing a successful business venture, not the systematic destruction of my life. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe properly. The hallway seemed to tilt, walls closing in. This can't be real. This is my family. I wanted to burst into that kitchen. Wanted to slam my phone down on the table and demand answers. Wanted to see their faces when they realized I knew everything. But something held me back. I needed more than this. I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd done. How long had this been going on? What were they planning to do with the money? Was it just the two of them? Or a male voice from the living room, everything set. I froze. A man. There was a man in this house. A man whose voice I didn't recognize. Almost done, Betty called back. Joseph still doesn't suspect anything. The man laughed. Deep, confident, casual. Perfect. My blood turned to ice. Who was he? Why was he here? And why did Betty sound so comfortable talking to him? We should probably head out soon, the man continued. Don't want to risk him actually showing up. He won't, Audrey said. He's at that meeting with Tech Vista. He'll be there for hours. They'd planned this, timed it, made sure I'd be safely occupied while they gathered here to discuss how they were robbing me blind. The man said something else too quiet for me to hear clearly. Betty responded with a laugh I recognized, intimate and familiar. The laugh she used to save just for me. I had to see him. Had to know who this person was who'd become part of my family's conspiracy against me. I moved carefully toward the living room doorway and looked inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. My hands steadied on the phone, still recording, as I inched closer to where I could see into the living room without being seen myself. The angle was awkward, forcing me to lean against the doorframe, but I had a clear view. A man sat on the sofa. Early 30s, maybe. Athletic build, well-dressed in dark jeans and a fitted sweater. Handsome in that casual, confident way that probably made him used to getting what he wanted. He sat close to Betty. Too close. His hand rested on the armrest between them, but his fingers brushed against her arm in a way that made my stomach turn. Betty didn't pull away. She laughed at something he said, her body language relaxed, comfortable. She's having an affair. The thought hit me like a sledgehammer. 24 years of marriage and my wife was having an affair with a man young enough to be her son. But then Audrey walked in from the kitchen. She carried 2 coffee mugs, moving with easy familiarity through the space. She handed one to Betty, then walked around the coffee table to give the other to the man. Thanks, sweetheart, he said, taking the mug. The word sweetheart hung in the air. The man stood up, moved toward Audrey. His hand touched her arm, lingering intimate. Audrey smiled at him, that same comfortable smile she used to give her high school boyfriend when she thought I wasn't watching. Wait, my mind struggled to process what I was seeing. Was this man involved with Betty or Audrey? I watched frozen as the man settled back onto the sofa, but this time he positioned himself between both women. Betty on his left, Audrey on his right. He talked to both of them, gesturing as he spoke, but his body language toward Audrey was different. More intimate. The way he looked at her. The way his hand found reasons to touch her shoulder, her hand, her knee. And Betty, my wife, either didn't notice or didn't care. What the hell was happening here? My phone was still in my hand, still recording audio. I switched to the camera, put it on silent mode, and started taking pictures. Zoom in, the man's face clear enough to identify him. Click. The man sitting with Betty, his hand on her arm. Click. The man leaning close to Audrey, their heads nearly touching. Click. Through the window, visible in the background, a car parked in the driveway I hadn't noticed before. Dark blue sedan. I zoomed in on the license plate. Oregon, HKR 2947. Click. I needed to know who this person was. Needed to understand what role he played in whatever conspiracy was unfolding in my life. The man laughed at something Audrey said. You're brilliant. You know that Joseph never saw any of this coming. Joseph. My name in his mouth sounded like mockery. He's too trusting, Betty said. Always has been. Makes things easier for us. Us, the three of them. A unit. A team. Working against me. How much longer? The man asked. Few more months, Audrey replied. Then we can make the final move. The final move. What did that mean? I took one more photo, the three of them together. A perfect shot that captured their comfortable conspiracy, then carefully backed away from the doorway. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they'd hear it. Each step backward felt dangerous, like I was defusing a bomb that could explode if I made one wrong move. I reached the front hallway. The flowers and medicine I'd brought sat on the entry table, mocking me with their useless optimism. I picked them up, couldn't leave evidence I'd been here, and moved to the front door. It was still slightly ajar, exactly as I'd found it. I slipped through, pulled it closed with barely a whisper of sound, then walked quickly across the wet lawn toward my car. The rain had picked up, coming down harder now. By the time I reached my car and got inside, I was soaked. I sat behind the wheel, not starting the engine, just sitting, staring. I pulled up the photos on my phone. The man's face filled the screen. Handsome, confident, smiling. Who are you? I swiped to the next photo. Him with Betty, then him with Audrey, then the license plate. HKR 947. I could track that. Find out who owned the car. Get a name. But what then? Rain drummed on the roof of the car, a steady percussion that matched the chaos in my head. I watched the house through the rain-streaked windshield, the lights glowing warm in the windows. My wife and daughter inside with a stranger planning something that would destroy me. $234,000. Already gone, and they weren't done yet. Had a few more months. Then we can make the final move. What was the final move? What else did they have planned? I looked at the photos again. The man's face, his comfortable intimacy with both my wife and daughter. The way they'd formed a triangle of conspiracy. And suddenly, I understood something that made my blood run even colder. This wasn't just about money. This was bigger, darker, more calculated than simple theft. They were planning something that would go beyond stealing my money. Something that required months more of preparation. Something they seemed confident I would never recover from. I sat in that car for 20 minutes, rain pounding on the metal above me, staring at the face of a stranger on my phone screen. My wife, my daughter, a man I'd never seen before, and a conspiracy larger and darker than anything I could have imagined. I drove home in a state of numbness. When I opened my laptop to check the bank accounts, my worst fears were confirmed. The highway stretched endlessly before me. Rain had stopped leaving wet pavement that reflected gray sky. I didn't remember the drive. My hands gripped the wheel, my foot worked the pedals, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Betty's laugh, Audrey's cold voice, that stranger's confident smile. $234,000. By 3 o'clock, I was pulling into my driveway. The house looked peaceful, ordinary. Nothing had changed on the outside. Everything had changed on the inside. I unlocked the door and stepped into silence. No one home. Just empty rooms holding secrets I'd been too blind to see. I went straight to my office, closed the door, and sat at my desk. My laptop sat waiting. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Please let this be wrong, please. But I already knew it wasn't. I logged into our U.S. bank account, the joint checking Betty and I had shared for 24 years. Set the date range to 18 months and clicked search. The screen loaded. There it was. Every single week like clockwork. Electronic transfer. $3,000. Tuesday 1 week, Thursday the next, but always there. Week after week after week. Destination investment account. Cayman Islands. I'd never authorized any account in the Cayman Islands. I did the math even though I knew the answer. 3,000 times 4 weeks times 18 months. $216,000. I scrolled deeper, found the anomalies. Larger transfers scattered throughout. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, another 3,000. Total $234,000. Exactly what Audrey had said. My chest tightened. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, water dripped from trees. A neighbor walked a dog. Normal life continuing while mine collapsed. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for this money. Skipped vacations. Missed dance recitals because of client deadlines. Told myself it was worth it because I was providing for my family. For what to fund my own destruction? I pulled out my phone and found the name I needed. Benjamin Clark, college roommate. Now one of Portland's top divorce attorneys. 2 rings. Joseph, long time. What's going on? His voice was warm, friendly. We hadn't talked in months. Ben, I need help. It's urgent. Everything in my tone changed his demeanor instantly. Come to my office right now. 30 minutes? I'll be waiting. I hung up and immediately dialed again. Philip Benson, my accountant for 10 years. Meticulous, thorough, trustworthy. Joseph, what can I do for you? Philip, but I need every financial record, every account, every transaction, every document. 3 years back. A pause. Philip was smart enough to understand what I wasn't saying. Is everything all right? No, but it will be. How fast can you get it? I'll pull everything tonight, tomorrow morning. Perfect, thank you. I set the phone down and took a breath. The pieces were moving into place. Legal representation, financial documentation, evidence. This was real. This was happening. I looked at the computer screen again. All those transfers marching away with my life's work. Each one represented hours away from home. Clients I'd helped. Trust I'd built. Trust. I'd built a career helping people protect their money. And I'd been too busy to notice my own family stealing mine. But Dad's so busy with his clients that he never looks at his own accounts. Audrey had been right. She'd studied me, understood my blind spots, and exploited them perfectly. My phone buzzed. Betty, a text message. How did your meeting go? Hope it went well. Love you. Love you. I stared at those words until they meant nothing. Then the phone rang. Betty calling. Her contact photo smiled up at me last summer at Cannon Beach sunset behind us, her telling me how lucky she felt. She couldn't know I knew. Not yet. Not until everything was in place. The phone rang, once, twice, 3 times. My finger hovered over the answer button, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not before I understood everything. Not before I had a plan. I let it go to voicemail. Guilt twisted inside me, 24 years of being the husband who always answered, who was always there. But that husband had been a fool. That husband had trusted while they robbed him blind. I couldn't be that husband anymore. Another buzz, voicemail notification. I didn't listen. Instead, I grabbed my keys, my laptop, and the printed bank statements. 30 minutes to Benjamin's office. I needed to move. As I locked the front door, my phone buzzed again. Betty. Everything okay? You didn't answer. I typed back with steady hands. Sorry, in the car. Meeting ran late, heading to another client. Talk tonight. Love you. The lie came easier than expected. I got in my car and drove toward downtown Portland, toward Benjamin's office, toward whatever came next. Behind me, the house stood empty, holding secrets I'd been too blind to see. But I wasn't blind anymore. Benjamin listened to the recording in absolute silence. When it ended, he looked at me with a mix of pity and cold fury. His office occupied the 20th floor of a downtown Portland high-rise. Glass walls offered a view of the city, spread below us, lights beginning to flicker on as evening approached. Modern furniture, law books lining one wall, and a desk that probably cost more than most people's cars. I'd driven here in a daze, the recording burning in my phone like evidence of a crime I still couldn't fully accept was real. Benjamin had cleared his schedule like he'd promised. Now he sat across from me, his expression growing darker with every word from the recording. Betty's voice. Did you transfer the $3,000 this week? Audrey's reply. Done this morning, Mom. 5 minutes of my family casually discussing how they'd stolen from me. When it finally ended, silence filled the office. Joseph. Benjamin's voice was controlled, professional, but I could hear the anger underneath. This is fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. This isn't just a bad marriage. This is criminal. I showed him the photos next. The man on my phone screen sitting between my wife and daughter, comfortable and confident. We need to identify him, Benjamin said immediately. I'm recommending we hire a private investigator. Beverly Quinn, she's the best in Portland. Whatever it takes. He nodded, already making notes. Here's what we're going to do. You don't confront them. Not yet. We build an ironclad case, first financial record surveillance evidence of every transaction. If you confront them now, they'll destroy evidence. They'll lawyer up. We'll lose our advantage. So I just pretend, act like everything's normal. Exactly. His eyes met mine. I know it's hard, but we strike when we're ready, not before. The drive home felt longer than it should have. I kept checking the clock. Philip would arrive at 8:30 with the financial records. By the time I pulled into my driveway, darkness had fully settled. I sat in the car for a moment, gathering myself, then went inside. Philip arrived exactly on time. In my home office, he spread documents across my desk, a thick stack of papers that represented 3 years of my financial life. Joseph, you need to see this. His voice was grave. He showed me the first document, a mortgage on our house, $120,000, dated 1 year ago. I never took out a mortgage, I said. Someone did. Look at the signature. I looked. It was supposed to be mine, but the handwriting was slightly off. Close, but not quite right. That's not my signature. I thought as much. Philip pulled out another document. And this. Your life insurance policy. 6 months ago, the beneficiary was changed. I stared at the paper. Where Betty's name should have been, I saw Audrey's name instead. I never authorized this change. Someone did. Someone with access to your personal information, your signature, your accounts. My hands went cold. They're planning something worse than theft. It appears that way. Philip's expression was grim. I'll have a complete analysis by the weekend. But Joseph, you need to be very careful. The sound of the front door opening made us both freeze. Dad, we're home. Audrey's voice, bright and cheerful, echoed through the house. I looked at Philip. He quickly gathered the documents, tucked them into his briefcase. Act normal, he whispered. I'll let myself out the back. I took a breath, forced my face into something resembling a smile, and walked out of my office. Audrey stood in the hallway, her face lit with what looked like genuine happiness. She rushed forward and hugged me. And Grandma and Grandpa are doing so much better. I hugged her back, feeling my heart crack. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Betty appeared behind her, tired but smiling. She kissed my cheek. Thank you for being so understanding about us leaving suddenly. Of course, I'm just glad they're okay. The lies came so easily now. Let me order pizza. It's late for dinner. Perfect. Betty squeezed my hand. I'm exhausted. 20 minutes later, we sat around the kitchen table with pizza boxes open between us. A normal family having a normal dinner. Audrey talked about work stress. Betty mentioned maybe visiting her parents again next week. I nodded, smiled, asked questions, played the role of concerned father and devoted husband. Inside, I was dying. Every word Audrey spoke, I heard her voice from the recording. Dad never checks his accounts. It's actually kind of funny. Every time Betty touched my hand, I felt that stranger's hand on her arm in her parents' living room. But I smiled. I laughed at Audrey's jokes. I kissed Betty's forehead when she yawned and said she was heading to bed early. I'll be up soon, I told her. Just want to finish some work emails. She went upstairs. Audrey followed shortly after calling goodnight from her room. I sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and the wreckage of my life. Later, I lay in bed beside my wife, listening to her peaceful breathing. She fell asleep easily, without guilt. I stared at the ceiling, mind spinning with evidence and plans. The beneficiary change, the forged signatures, the hidden accounts, the mysterious man. $234,000 already gone. Tomorrow I'd call Beverly Quinn. Tomorrow the real investigation would begin. Over the next week I became an actor in my own life. Every smile was rehearsed. Every "I love you" tasted like ash. Friday morning, day 1. I sat across from Beverly Quinn in her office on the east side of Portland. Modest space filing cabinets lining the walls, computer screens showing surveillance footage from other cases. Professional, efficient, exactly what I needed. Beverly was in her 50s, sharp-eyed with the kind of presence that made you feel like she saw everything you were trying to hide. "Tell me everything," she said. I showed her the photos, the recording, the license plate number HKR 2947. She studied each piece of evidence, carefully taking notes. "I'll find out who he is, where he goes, who he's really with. I need everything, no matter how much it hurts. You'll have answers within a week." She looked at me directly. "But Joseph, be prepared. The truth is rarely kind." I already knew that. The drive home felt surreal. I was about to spend the next week pretending nothing had changed, while a stranger investigated my family's betrayal. That weekend began the torture. Saturday morning, I made breakfast. Betty came downstairs in her robe, kissed my cheek, told me the eggs were perfect. I smiled, kissed her back. Tasted nothing but lies. Audrey joined us, cheerful and bright. "Dad, this is amazing. You're the best. To do anything for my girls." The words came automatically hollow. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Clients asked questions I had to ask them to repeat. Numbers blurred on spreadsheets. My assistant knocked on my door Tuesday afternoon. "Mr. Barrett, are you feeling all right? You seem distracted." "Just a lot on my mind. I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. Every evening I came home to family dinners. Betty would talk about her day visiting friends, running errands, helping her parents. All of it probably lies. Audrey would share excitement about work projects and marketing campaigns. "The new campaign is launching next week, Dad. I think it's going to be huge." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You've worked so hard." I wanted to scream, wanted to flip the table and demand the truth. Instead, I smiled and asked follow-up questions like a good father. Betty noticed something was wrong by Wednesday. "Honey, you look exhausted. Is everything okay?" Busy season. You know how it gets." "Well, maybe you should take a day off." "I will soon." Another lie to add to the pile. The nights were worst. Lying next to Betty in the dark, listening to her peaceful breathing while my mind spun with evidence and questions. She slept easily without guilt. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. Thursday night I broke down in my home office, sat alone in the dark, head in my hands. 24 years of marriage. A daughter I'd raised from birth. Had any of it been real? My phone rang. Beverly. "On Joseph, I've identified him. Evan Cross, 32 years old, personal trainer at Equinox Gym in the Pearl District. Lives in a luxury apartment nearby." My hands went cold. "Is he with my wife?" "I'm still confirming details. Give me more time." 2 days later, day 5, she called again. "Joseph, I've been following Evan for 5 days now. And he meets with Audrey every single day. Coffee shops, his apartment, restaurants, they're clearly involved." I felt sick. "What about Betty?" "He's met with Betty twice. Both times Audrey was present, but the body language..." Beverly paused. "He's not with Betty, Joseph. The intimacy, the way he looks at her, touches her, that's all directed at Audrey." The words took a moment to land. "You're saying, Evan is your daughter's boyfriend, not your wife's. I sat down heavily. The room tilted. Audrey was the mastermind, not Betty. My daughter, my little girl, was manipulating her own mother, using her. And Betty either didn't see it or didn't care. I remembered the life insurance documents, the beneficiary change, Audrey's name replacing Betty's. She's planning something, I said quietly. Something worse than theft. Joseph, there's more. My grip tightened on the phone. What? I've been monitoring online activity. Audrey's been searching for information about substances that don't leave traces. And I checked your car's maintenance records. Someone tampered with your brake system 3 weeks ago. The world stopped. What are you saying? Beverly's voice was steady but grave. I'm saying your daughter may be planning to harm you. 3 days passed in uneasy silence. I still went through the motions, work, home, family dinners, but I watched Audrey carefully. Then, on day 10, someone tried to end my life. Wednesday afternoon, 5:45. I left my office building and walked to the parking garage, briefcase in hand, mind occupied with client files and Beverly's latest report. The rain had started again, Portland's constant companion. I got in my car, started the engine, and merged onto Interstate 5 southbound toward home. Traffic was moderate, rush hour but not terrible. Rain made the pavement slick, headlights reflecting off wet asphalt. I stayed in the middle lane, cruise control set to 65. 15 minutes into the drive, the car ahead of me braked suddenly. I pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. The pedal went straight to the floor. No resistance. No slowing. My car kept rolling forward, momentum carrying me toward the stopped vehicle ahead. No, 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 no! I pumped the brake. Nothing. Pressed harder. The pedal hit the floor with each push, useless. Ahead of me, concrete barriers. Behind me, cars approaching fast. To my left, a semi-truck barreling down the highway. I yanked the wheel hard right. The car slid across lanes. Tires screamed. A horn blared, the truck missing me by inches. I felt the air displacement as it roared past. More horns, shouting. My car skidding sideways across 2 lanes. I pulled the emergency brake, grabbed it hard and held on. The car shuddered, fishtailed, but finally began to slow. I guided it to the shoulder, fighting for control. Gravel crunched under tires. The car lurched, bounced, and came to a stop. I sat there, hands locked on the wheel, heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs would crack. Vision blurred at the edges. Cars rushed past. Some honked. Most ignored me. A knock on my window made me jump. "Sir, you okay?" A man in a rain jacket, concerned face pressed against the glass. I nodded. Couldn't speak. Rolled down the window. "You all right? That was close." "Brakes failed." My voice sounded distant. Need a tow truck. You want me to call someone?" "I've got it, thank you." He hesitated, then walked back to his car. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called for a tow. 30 minutes later, my car was being loaded onto a flatbed. The driver recommended a repair shop nearby. I rode with him, still trembling. At the shop, a mechanic crawled under my car while I waited in the office, drinking terrible coffee and trying to stop my hands from shaking. 20 minutes passed. The mechanic emerged, wiping his hands on a rag. His expression was grave. "Mr. Barrett, your brake lines were cut. Deliberately." The coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. "What?" "Someone tampered with your vehicle. Look." He pulled up photos on his phone. "These are clean cuts, not wear and tear. Someone wanted your brakes to fail." I stared at the images. Clean slices through the brake lines. Precise. Intentional. "This is sabotage, sir. You need to report this to police." I called from the shop. An officer arrived within the hour, took my statement, photographed the brake lines, and filed a report. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" He asked, pen poised over his notepad. I thought about Audrey, about Beverly's discoveries, about brake tampering 3 weeks ago that had finally manifested today. "No, I lied." "Any security cameras at your home?" "No." I realized how vulnerable I was. No cameras, no protection, living with someone who wanted me dead. Now, be careful, Mr. Barrett. Whoever did this, they meant for you to have an accident. He gave me a case number and left. By 8:30, I was in an Uber heading home. My car would be in the shop for days. I'd have to rent something tomorrow. I walked through the front door to find Betty and Audrey on the couch watching television. Audrey jumped up immediately. "Dad, we heard about the car. Are you okay?" She rushed over and hugged me tight. I stood rigid, studying her face over her shoulder. Was that genuine concern? Or was she disappointed I was still alive? "What happened?" Betty stood face worried. "Brake failure. I'm fine, just shaken up." "Oh my God, Joseph." Betty's hand flew to her mouth. "You could have been killed." "Dad, that's terrifying." Audrey pulled back, looking up at me with wide eyes. "You could have died." I met her gaze directly. "I know, sweetheart." Behind those concerned eyes, what was she really thinking? Had she hoped I wouldn't come home tonight? Had she been waiting for a phone call from the police telling her I was dead? "I'm just glad you're safe." Betty hugged me. "That's all that matters." I returned the hug mechanically. Safe. I wasn't safe. Not in this house. Not with these people. We ate a late dinner. They fussed over me, asked questions, expressed relief and concern in all the right places. I watched Audrey carefully. Every expression, every word, searching for cracks in the performance. But she was good, very good. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Betty slept peacefully beside me. The house settled around us, creaking boards, groaning pipes, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Every sound made me flinch. Somewhere in this house, the person who'd tried to kill me was sleeping soundly. At 2 a.m, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and went to the bathroom, closed the door, and called Beverly. She answered on the second ring. "Joseph, we need to move faster," I whispered. Before she tries again. 3 days after the brake incident, Beverly called with information that made everything clearer and infinitely darker. Saturday morning. Day 13 since I'd discovered the truth. I sat across from Beverly in a quiet coffee shop on the east side, away from anyone who might recognize me. She slid a thick folder across the table. "Evan Cross, here's what I found." I opened it. The first page showed his driver's license photo. That confident smile. Those eyes that had looked at my daughter with calculated interest. 32 years old. Personal trainer at Equinox in the Pearl District. Annual salary approximately $45,000. Rents an apartment for $2,800 a month. I did the math quickly. That's most of his income just on rent. Exactly. Beverly pulled out more photos. But look at what he drives. A Mercedes. Dark blue, the same one I'd photographed outside Walter and Mildred's house. I looked up the model later, $65,000. And his clothes. More photos, designer labels, expensive watches. This isn't a $45,000 lifestyle, Joseph. Where's the money coming from? It's from Audrey, from your accounts. She showed me surveillance photos next. Evan and Audrey outside a restaurant, his arm around her waist. Evan and Audrey entering his apartment building, her hand in his. A kiss on a street corner that made my stomach turn. Then photos of Evan with Betty. Coffee shops, casual conversations. But the body language was completely different. Professional, distant, no touching. And Audrey thinks Evan loves her. Betty thinks the same thing. But Evan only loves money. The words settled over me like ice. Monday afternoon, my phone rang. "Philip." "Joseph, sit down." I was already sitting at my desk, but his tone made me brace myself. "I've completed the full analysis. What I found..." He paused. "It's worse than we thought." "Tell me." 8 months ago, there was a $50,000 transfer from your investment account. The memo line says, "Investment, Evans Gym Startup." What gym?" Not exactly. There is no gym, no business registration, no LLC formation, nothing. The money went directly into Evan's personal account. $50,000. Gone. For a business that never existed. Hadi, the mortgage on your house, the $120,000 one, I traced where the money went. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The signature is yours, but it's not, it's forged. I suspected as much. And Joseph, there's one more thing. Your life insurance policy. I already knew where this was going, but I let him continue. $1 million. 6 months ago, the beneficiary was changed from Betty to Audrey. The authorization signature is supposed to be yours. I never signed that. I know. But if you were to pass away, Audrey would receive $1 million. My blood ran cold. The brake lines. The failed attempt. She needed me gone. Philip, thank you. Send me everything in writing. Already done. Joseph, be careful. Wednesday evening, day 17. I came home early, told Betty I had a headache, and went upstairs to lie down. But I didn't go to the bedroom. I went to my office and closed the door quietly. Audrey was in her room. I could hear her voice through the wall. She was on the phone. I moved into the hallway, standing just outside her door. Mom thinks you're her boyfriend, Evan. Audrey's voice carried clearly, a male voice on speakerphone. Evan. Let her think that. We need her cooperation. But what about Dad? When is it going to happen? My heart stopped. Be patient, babe. The first attempt didn't work. But there are other ways. I can't wait much longer. I need that insurance money. Soon. Very soon, I promise. I stood frozen in the hallway. Every word was a knife. They were planning to kill me. My daughter and her boyfriend were actively planning my death so they could collect $1 million. And Betty, my wife, was just a pawn. She thought Evan cared about her. Had no idea he was using her, manipulating her, keeping her compliant while he and Audrey plotted murder. I backed away from the door silently, down the stairs, into my office, locked the door, sat at my desk with my head in my hands. 24 years of marriage, a daughter I'd loved from the moment she was born. And it had all led to this, sitting in my own home listening to my child discuss the best way to end my life. I picked up my phone and called Benjamin. We need to move faster, I said, voice shaking. They're planning a second attempt. This time they might succeed. Benjamin's response was cold, controlled. Then we strike first. Tomorrow we accelerate everything. 2 days after overhearing Audrey's phone call on a quiet Sunday morning, the second attempt came. It was more direct, and it almost succeeded. Sunday, 9 in the morning. I sat in the living room with the newspaper spread across my lap, trying to maintain the appearance of normalcy even though every nerve in my body was on alert. Footsteps on the stairs. Audrey came down, already dressed, her face bright with a smile. Good morning, Dad. Want some coffee? I'm making your favorite. I looked up from the paper. My favorite. Caramel latte with an extra shot of espresso. She only made that on special occasions. That would be great, sweetheart. She disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the espresso machine hissing the clink of mugs. 10 minutes later, she returned carrying a large ceramic cup. Extra shot, just how you like it. She set it on the coffee table in front of me with a smile that looked completely genuine. Thank you, Audrey. She settled onto the couch beside me, picking up her phone but not really looking at it, watching me instead in her peripheral vision. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. Steam rose from the surface. It smelled perfect, rich coffee, sweet caramel, exactly the way I'd always liked it. Is this it? Is this the moment? But I couldn't show fear. Couldn't let her know I suspected anything. I took a sip. It tasted normal. Sweet, strong, exactly right. I took another sip, then another. Over the next 20 minutes, I drank half the cup while reading the sports section and occasionally commenting on articles to Audrey. She responded appropriately, laughed at the right moments, asked questions. The perfect daughter, spending a quiet Sunday morning with her father. 9:45. The room tilted. I gripped the armrest of the chair. The newspaper slid from my lap. Dead. Audrey's voice sounded distant. "You okay?" My heart was racing, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The room spun like I was on a carnival ride. "I don't feel right." I tried to stand. My legs buckled. I went down hard, hitting the floor with my shoulder. The impact barely registered through the chaos in my head. Couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, constricting, vision blurring at the edges. "Dead Mom." Betty's footsteps thundered down the stairs. "Conivdi, Joseph." I tried to respond, but couldn't form words. The ceiling swam above me. Audrey's face appeared hovering over mine, her expression perfectly crafted concern. "Call 911. Her voice sharp, panicked. "Mom, call them now." Betty's voice from somewhere far away. My husband collapsed. He's barely breathing. The world faded in and out. Darkness creeping in from the sides. My last coherent thought. She did this. She put something in the coffee, then nothing. Fluorescent lights, beeping machines, the antiseptic smell of hospital. I opened my eyes slowly. White ceiling tiles, an IV in my arm. A doctor stood beside the bed, checking a chart. He noticed I was awake. Mr. Barrett, you're at Providence Portland Medical Center. You had a severe reaction. Your wife brought you in." "What happened?" "We found extremely high levels of sedatives in your system, enough to cause respiratory failure." "How much did you take this morning?" My mind raced through the fog. I needed to be careful. Couldn't reveal the truth yet. Not until everything was ready. I must have taken my sleep medication by mistake. Thought it was my vitamins. The doctor's expression was skeptical. "Mr. Barrett, the concentration we found would be equivalent to 8 to 10 pills. Are you certain this was accidental?" "I've been under a lot of stress. Work. I probably wasn't paying attention." He studied me for a long moment. "We'll need to keep you overnight for observation." After he left, Betty and Audrey were allowed in. Betty rushed to the bedside, tears streaming. "Joseph, you scared us to death." Audrey took my hand, squeezing it gently. Her fingers felt cold. "Dad, you have to be more careful with your medications." I looked into her eyes, saw perfect concern, perfect worry, a flawless performance. "I will, sweetheart, I promise." She held my hand for another moment, then let go. As she turned away, I could swear I saw something else flicker across her face. Disappointment, frustration. She'd expected me to die today. That night, after Betty and Audrey had gone home, after the nurses had checked on me one final time, I locked myself in the hospital bathroom with my phone. My hands shook as I dialed Beverly's number. "She tried again," I whispered. "Something in the coffee. Sedatives. I almost didn't make it." Beverly's voice came through cold as steel. "Joseph, we end this now. I'm arranging 24-hour protection, and we need 1 week to prepare everything perfectly. Next Sunday. We'll end this next Sunday." Benjamin called it the end game. I called it justice. Either way, we had 1 week to prepare for the moment that would change everything. Wednesday morning. Day 23. I sat in Benjamin's conference room, surrounded by evidence of my family's betrayal. Benjamin, Beverly, and Philip were all present. The table between us was covered with documents, photos, and printed transcripts. Let's review what we have. Benjamin organized the materials into neat stacks. First, the audio recordings. 5 minutes of Betty and Audrey casually discussing how they'd stolen from me. Their voices clear and damning. Next, Beverly's surveillance photos. Evan with Audrey kissing, holding hands, entering his apartment. Evan with Betty coffee conversation, careful distance. Then Philip's financial analysis. He'd compiled everything into a single report. $234,000 stolen through wire transfers over 18 months. $120,000 taken through a forged mortgage on your house. $50,000 sent to a fake gym investment that never existed. He looked up at me. Total $404,000. The number sat heavy in the air. The life insurance policy change. Philip continued. $1 million. Beneficiary switched from Betty to Audrey 6 months ago. Your signature forged. Beverly added her findings. Brake sabotage. We have the mechanics report showing deliberate tampering, and the hospital records from the sedative overdose. Benjamin tapped the table. This is enough for criminal prosecution. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to cause harm. The evidence is overwhelming. What about Evan? I asked. Beverly's expression shifted slightly. I'm still digging. There's something bigger here. Give me 2 more days. We don't have 2 days. Sunday is... I know, she met my eyes. And you'll have everything you need by then. I promise. Security was the next discussion. I've arranged 24-hour protection, Beverly said. Derek, former military. He'll pose as a new neighbor, armed, trained, and watching your house constantly. I nodded. The attempts on my life had escalated. I couldn't take chances anymore. My daily routine had changed dramatically. I no longer ate anything Betty or Audrey prepared. Every meal came from restaurants, sealed containers I opened myself. I locked my bedroom door at night, checked my car thoroughly every morning before starting it. Betty had noticed Tuesday evening. Honey, you're acting strange. Is everything okay? I'd forced a smile. Just work stress. Big account about to close. She'd seemed to accept that, but I'd seen the concern in her eyes. Or maybe suspicion. I couldn't tell anymore. Friday evening, day 26. We sat around the dinner table, Betty, Audrey, and me eating takeout Chinese food. I set down my chopsticks and spoke casually. Let's do a family dinner Sunday night, here at home. Betty looked up, surprised but pleased. That sounds wonderful. What's the occasion? An important announcement about our future. Audrey's eyes narrowed slightly. I hope it's good news. You'll see. I took a sip of water. Oh, and Audrey, why don't you invite Evan? I'd like to meet him officially. The change in her expression was instantaneous. Fear flashed across her face, quickly masked. Evan, why? Your mother's mentioned how helpful he's been. With her parents' health issues, I'd like to thank him properly. Betty looked confused, but didn't object. She still believed Evan was somehow connected to her helping her family. Audrey's voice was careful. I'll ask him. Great. Sunday at 7. Formal dinner. I returned to my food as if the conversation was trivial, but I'd seen it. That moment of panic. She knew something was wrong. The trap was being set and she could feel it. Saturday, day 27. Final preparations. Benjamin called with updates. Police are on standby. Plainclothes unmarked car parked 2 blocks away. They'll move on your signal. Beverly arrived at my house mid-morning to install hidden cameras. Small devices positioned around the dining room, living room, and entryway, all feeding to a secure server. Everything will be recorded, she said. Audio and video. Court-admissible quality. I spent the afternoon in my office writing and rewriting what I'd say, practicing keeping my voice steady, my hands calm. At 6 o'clock, I called Beverly. The update on Evan, do you have it yet? I'm tracking something significant. You'll have it tomorrow morning. Joseph, it's bigger than we thought. This information, it's going to change everything. How so? Let's just say that even Audrey is going to realize she's been deceived. Sunday morning arrived with clear, cold skies. I stood in the kitchen at dawn, watching the sun rise over Portland's skyline. The city woke slowly, lights flickering on in apartments, early traffic beginning to move. By sunset, everything would be different. My family would be shattered. The truth would be exposed. And somewhere across this city, Beverly was preparing the final piece of evidence, a secret about Evan Cross that would prove even my daughter had been a pawn in a larger game. I poured myself coffee my own made with my own hands in my own kitchen and waited for the day to begin. Sunday evening, 6 o'clock sharp. The dinner to end everything was about to begin. 4 in the afternoon, I'd started setting the dining room table. Fine china we only used for special occasions. White tablecloth, candles in silver holders. Everything arranged with precision. Betty was in the kitchen, the smell of roasting chicken filling the house. "Joseph, this looks beautiful," she called out. "What's this important announcement you mentioned?" "You'll hear soon enough." 5 o'clock. Audrey came downstairs, dressed carefully, black dress, pearl earrings, makeup done perfectly. But her hands kept reaching for her phone, checking it, setting it down, checking it again. "Is Evan coming?" I asked casually. "He'll be here at 6. Good. At 5:45 my phone buzzed. Text from Benjamin. Cameras live. Police ready. Good luck." I took a deep breath. 5:55, the doorbell rang. Audrey practically ran to answer it. I stayed in the living room listening. "Hey, babe." Evan's voice. A kiss. "You look amazing." They entered together. Evan wore a button-down shirt and dress pants, his appearance polished and confident. Exactly the kind of man who could charm his way into people's trust. I stood extending my hand. "You must be Evan. I'm Joseph." His handshake was firm, his smile easy. "Great to finally meet you, sir. I've heard so much about you." I studied him. Younger than I'd expected, early 30s, like Beverly had said. Handsome. The kind of charismatic presence that made you want to believe whatever he said. "Evan." Betty emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "So glad you could make it." She moved to hug him. Evan returned the embrace politely, but I saw it, his body oriented toward Audrey, even while Betty's arms were around him. A subtle shift. A tell. Betty didn't notice. I noticed everything. "Should we sit?" Betty gestured toward the dining room. "Dinner's almost ready." But I wanted a few more minutes. Wanted to watch them interact in this space where they thought they were safe. "Let's chat first," I said. "Evan, can I get you something to drink?" "Water's fine, thanks." We settled in the living room. Betty returned to the kitchen. Audrey sat on the couch, Evan beside her. Close but not touching, playing their roles. "Beautiful home, Mr. Barrett." "Thank you, result of 20 years of work." "Audrey mentioned you're a financial advisor." That's right." I met his eyes directly. "I help people protect their assets. Make sure no one takes advantage of them." Something flickered across his face. Brief. Quickly masked. Audrey stood abruptly. "Dad, should we move to the dining room? Mom's probably ready." "Of course." The dining room table looked perfect. Candlelight cast warm shadows. The chicken sat golden brown on a serving platter surrounded by roasted potatoes and vegetables. I took my place at the head of the table. Betty sat to my right, Audrey to my left, Evan beside her. Betty brought out the food, serving each of us with practiced efficiency. Audrey's hands trembled slightly as she accepted her plate. "This looks wonderful, honey," I said to Betty. "No, thank you." She sat down, smoothing her napkin across her lap. "Should we say grace?" "Of course." We joined hands. My right hand held Betty's. My left held Audrey's. Both of them had betrayed me. Both of them had plotted against me. And here we sat, holding hands like a family. "Lord, thank you for this food and for this family. Amen." "Amen," and we echoed. I released their hands and picked up my fork. The silence was thick, heavy. No one seemed to know how to break it. Betty tried. "So, Evan, how did you and Audrey meet?" "At the gym where I work. Actually," I interrupted, setting my fork down carefully. The sound of metal on china rang clear in the quiet room. Everyone looked at me. Betty's expression was confused. Audrey's smile had frozen on her face. Evan's hand stopped halfway to his mouth, fork suspended in air. I looked at each of them. my wife, my daughter, the man who'd helped destroy my life. They were still performing, still pretending. But the performance was over. Before we continue, I said, voice calm and controlled, there's something we need to discuss. Betty set down her wine glass. Joseph, what's going on? Audrey's face had gone pale. Evan lowered his fork, slowly, eyes locked on mine. We need to talk about the $234,000 that's been stolen from me. The words hung in the air like thunder. $234,000. Silence descended over the dining table. Betty's fork clattered onto her plate. What, Joseph, what are you talking about? I kept my voice calm, cold. Weekly wire transfers, $3,000, every week for 18 months, to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Dad, I didn't, Audrey started. Don't lie anymore, Audrey, not now. Betty's face had gone white. There must be some mistake. No mistake. I reached beside my chair where I'd hidden a folder earlier. I have every transaction documented. I opened it, spreading bank statements across the table. Each transfer was highlighted in yellow. Dates, amounts, destinations. All of it there in black and white. I pushed the folder toward Betty. She looked down at the pages. Her hand trembled as she touched the paper. I can explain. I don't want explanations. I want the truth. Betty's mouth opened, closed. No words came. I pulled out my phone. Let me play something for everyone. Joseph, don't. Betty's voice broke. I pressed play. Betty's voice came through the phone's speaker, clear and unmistakable. Did you transfer the $3,000 this week? Audrey's reply. Done this morning, Mom. Dad never checks the statements anyway. What's the total now? $234,000. The recording continued. 2 minutes of my wife and daughter casually discussing how they'd stolen from me. Every word precise, every admission damning. Betty's hand flew to her mouth. Tears began streaming down her face. Audrey sat frozen, face drained of color. Evan remained perfectly still, watching everything with calculating eyes. When the recording ended, I set the phone down. Recorded 3 weeks ago, at your parents' house in Salem. Betty looked up at me, eyes wide with shock. You were there. Your parents weren't sick, Betty. Never were. You lied so you could meet with Audrey and plan this. I kept my voice level. I heard everything. I saw everything. Joseph, I'm so sorry. Betty's voice shook. Sorry for what? For stealing from me or for getting caught. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I was lonely. The words burst out of her. You were never home, always working, always with clients. So you stole from me. That's your justification. Audrey said we deserved it, that you wouldn't even notice the money was gone. I turned to Audrey. You said that. My daughter's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Dad, let me explain. I've heard enough lies. I pulled out more documents. House mortgage, $120,000, taken out a year ago. I slid the paper toward Betty. Look at the signature. She looked. Her face went even paler. That's not my signature, I said quietly. It's a forgery. Someone used my name to take out a loan against our house. I added another document to the pile. Fake gym investment, $50,000, sent to a business that doesn't exist. Betty stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. $404,000, all of it gone. I didn't know about those. Betty sobbed. Joseph, I swear I only knew about the weekly transfers, but you knew enough. My voice was ice. You knew you were stealing from me. You knew you were lying to me every single day. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. Audrey sat rigid in her chair, not moving, barely breathing. And Evan watched it all unfold, with the detachment of someone watching a play. I let the silence stretch, let them sit with what they'd done. Then I spoke again. But that's not even the worst part, Betty. She looked up, tears streaming. What do you mean? The worst part is what you don't know. I looked at Audrey, then at Evan, then back to Betty. Tell your mother the truth, Audrey. Tell her about Evan. All the color drained from Audrey's face. She looked like she might be sick. Evan's jaw tightened. His hand moved slightly under the table. Betty looked between them, confusion replacing some of the grief in her eyes. What about Evan? He's been helping us, helping my parents. Helping you. I let the question hang. Or using you. I don't understand. I think you do. Deep down, I think you've known something wasn't right. Betty looked at Evan. Really looked at him. For the first time, I saw doubt creep into her expression. Evan has been very attentive to our family, I continued. To you, Betty, making you feel seen, feel valued. Hasn't he? She nodded slowly, uncertain where this was going. And you believed he cared about you. That maybe after all these years of me being absent, someone finally saw you. More tears fell. Joseph, but look at where he's sitting, Betty. Who he chose to sit next to. She looked. Evan sat beside Audrey, not beside her. Look at how he's sitting. Under the table, I could see what Betty couldn't, Evan's hand gripping Audrey's thigh. Audrey leaning slightly toward him, not away from him. Betty's eyes moved between them, confusion deepening. She didn't understand yet, but she was about to. I reached under my chair and pulled out a tablet I'd hidden there before dinner. Opened a video file. Beverly Quinn is an excellent investigator. I pressed play and turned the screen toward Betty. The video showed a street corner in the Pearl District. Evan and Audrey standing close together outside an apartment building. Then Evan pulled her in, kissing her deeply. His hand on her waist, her fingers touching his face, both of them smiling. The timestamp read Tuesday last week, 2:47 p.m. Betty's face transformed. Disbelief, suspicion, then horror. No, that can't be. The video auto-played to the next clip. A coffee shop. Audrey sitting on Evan's lap, his arms wrapped around her waist. Another clip. A restaurant. Hands clasped across the table. Looking at each other the way lovers do. Another. The apartment building at night. 11 p.m. Entering together. Betty stood so abruptly her chair scraped loudly across the floor. Audrey, you and Evan. Tears streamed down Audrey's face. Mom, I'm sorry. You're sorry, Betty's voice cracked. I thought he loved me. He never loved you, Betty. I kept my voice cold. He was using you. Evan spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. This is ridiculous. Sit down, Evan. I'm not finished. He remained standing, posture defensive. I continued looking at Betty. Audrey met Evan 10 months ago. They planned everything. The theft, the offshore accounts, using you as an accomplice without you even knowing the full scope. Betty turned to Audrey, face twisted with hurt. You let me think I was having an affair with him. You told me he cared about me. Mom, you weren't happy with Dad. So you used my loneliness, my unhappiness, to steal from your father. She used everything, I said. Your marital problems, my work schedule, even your parents. My parents knew about this too. No. They're innocent. That day they were legitimately sick. But Audrey used it as cover to meet with Evan and finalize plans. Dad, please. Audrey reached toward me. But theft wasn't enough for you, was it, Audrey? I pulled out more documents, placed them on the table one by one. A life insurance beneficiary change. 6 months ago. Changed from your mother to you. $1 million. I let that sink in. I never signed that authorization. It's forged. Another document. Mechanic's report. My brake lines were deliberately cut 3 weeks ago. I nearly crashed on Interstate 5 at 65 miles per hour. Betty's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. And 2 Sundays ago I collapsed after drinking coffee you made Audrey. The hospital found dangerous levels of sedatives in my system, enough to cause respiratory failure. Betty turned to Audrey, eyes wide with horror. You tried to hurt your father. No, I would never. I have recordings, Audrey. I heard you on the phone with Evan. When will it happen? You asked him. I need that insurance money, you said. Audrey's face crumpled. I was drowning in debt. Austin Mercer scammed me out of $85,000. I lost everything. Evan said he'd help me. Evan helped you plan to end my life. That's a lie. Evan's voice was sharp. I ignored him, keeping my focus on the devastation spreading across Betty's face. I thought we were in this together. Betty stared at Audrey like looking at a stranger. Mother and daughter. You were just a pawn, Betty. Audrey and Evan played you from the very beginning. Betty sat down heavily, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. My daughter. Audrey reached for her. Mom, please. Betty pushed her hand away violently. Don't touch me. The words hung in the air. A mother rejecting her child. Audrey sobbed, but Betty turned her face away. I stood up from my chair and moved toward the dining room doorway. Everyone's eyes followed me. But there's one more thing, I said quietly. One final lie that needs exposing. I looked directly at Evan. Tell them, Evan. Tell them about your real life, the one Audrey doesn't know about. Evan's face went pale. The confident mask he'd worn all evening finally cracked. For the first time that night, he looked truly afraid. I stepped to the dining room doorway and called out, You can come in now. Before I reveal who actually walked through that door, I want to pause for a moment. What do you think is about to happen? Who do you believe it is, and why? Share your thoughts or predictions in the comments below so I know you're still here with me. And just so you know, parts of what comes next include fictionalized elements and may not reflect real events. If this isn't something you'd like to continue watching, you're free to stop the video here. The sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Footsteps in the hallway, slow, hesitant, uncertain. A young woman appeared in the doorway, holding a small boy in her arms. She wore scrubs visible beneath an open jacket, her face showing the exhaustion of a double shift. The boy, maybe 5 years old, clutched a teddy bear to his chest and looked around with wide, confused eyes that took in the fancy dining room, the overturned documents, the frozen faces staring at him. Absolute silence fell over the room like a physical weight. Evan's fork clattered against his plate. His face went white, not pale, but actually white, like someone had drained all the blood from his body in an instant. Then he stood so abruptly, his chair toppled backward with a crash that made Noah flinch and bury his face in his mother's shoulder. No, no, no. The word came out like a prayer, like he could somehow make reality disappear by denying it. The woman looked at him, confusion and concern mixing in her voice. Evan, what's going on? You said this was an important meeting with a client. I kept my voice calm, measured, as if I were introducing guests at a dinner party instead of detonating a bomb. Everyone, this is Megan Cross. And this is Noah. Audrey's head whipped toward them so fast I heard her neck crack. Who are they? I let the silence stretch for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. My Megan is Evan's wife. Noah is his 5-year-old son. The words hung in the air for one perfect crystalline moment before everything exploded. Audrey shot to her feet, her whole body trembling like she'd been electrocuted. Her chair scraped backward with a screech. Wife, son, Evan, you said you were single. You said you'd never been married. Betty's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes darted between Evan and the woman in the doorway, trying to process what she was seeing. Oh my God. Oh my God. Megan took a step backward, instinctively pulling Noah closer. Her eyes filled with tears. Evan, who are these people? Why is that woman calling you Evan held up both hands like he could physically push reality away. Megan, this isn't, I can explain. You can't explain this! Audrey's voice cracked with hysteria. She pointed at Noah with a shaking hand. You have a child, I moved toward Megan, gently keeping my movements slow so as not to frighten Noah further. The boy's eyes were wide, his teddy bear clutched so tightly his knuckles were white. Megan, thank you for coming. I know this is incredibly difficult. Mr. Barrett, you said you had important information about my husband. Her voice broke. You said it was urgent that I needed to bring Noah that. Please sit down. I gestured toward Betty's empty seat. Then I crouched down to Noah's eye level. Noah, would you like some cookies in the kitchen? Maybe watch something on an iPad, I have cartoons. The boy looked up at his mother uncertainly. Megan hesitated, looking around the room at Evan's pale face, at Audrey's tears, at Betty's shell-shocked expression. Then she nodded slowly. Noah, sweetheart, go with this nice man for just a minute, okay? Mommy needs to talk to some grown-ups. Noah's small voice. Is Daddy in trouble? The question hung in the air. No one answered. I took Noah's hand, so small, so trusting, and led him to the kitchen. Set him up at the counter with a plate of chocolate chip cookies and the iPad playing Paw Patrol. He settled in, happily swinging his legs, oblivious to the devastation unfolding just one room away. When I returned to the dining room, all eyes were on me except Evan's. He was staring at the floor, his jaw working, but no sound coming out. Megan lives in Vancouver, Washington. I began, my voice steady. She's a nurse at Providence Hospital. Works the night shift most weeks. She's been married to Evan for 6 years. Megan corrected quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. 7 years this past June. We had a party. Noah drew pictures. You said... She looked at Evan. You said it was the best day of your life. He still wouldn't look at her. I nodded. During my investigation, I discovered that Evan has been living a double life. Monday through Wednesday in Vancouver with you and Noah. I pointed toward Audrey. Thursday through Sunday here in Portland with my daughter. That's not true. Audrey's voice was desperate now, pleading. Evan, tell them it's not true. But Evan said nothing. Just stood there like a statue, his hands clenched at his sides. The training clients he told you about. I looked at Megan. That was Audrey. The consulting work that kept him in Portland. That was this affair. Megan turned to Evan, her voice shaking. All those nights you said you were training late clients. All those weekends you said you had to work. Noah's preschool tuition that suddenly got paid in full. The new car we couldn't afford. Where did it all come from? Silence. Answer her, Audrey screamed. Tell her where you got the money. From this family, I said quietly. From accounts my daughter stole from me over 18 months. $234,000. Money that was supposed to be for her future, for our retirement. Evan's been using it to fund his life with you, Megan. Your car, Noah's school, your mortgage payments. All of it. Megan covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Noah's tuition, our house. It was all stolen money. I'm sorry, Megan. You deserve to know the truth. Audrey stepped toward Evan, hands outstretched like she was drowning, and he was the only lifeline. You said you loved me. You said we'd get married once we had enough money. You said... Her voice broke into a sob. You said you'd never leave me. Evan finally spoke, his voice hollow and dead. Audrey... Yet you said I was the only one. You said Betty was just a means to an end, that I was the real plan. Megan's laugh was bitter and broken. He told me the same things. On our wedding day 7 years ago. He said I was his forever. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Audrey collapsed back into her chair, her whole body folding in on itself, like she'd been punched in the stomach. She buried her face in her hands. It was all lies. Everything. All of it. Yes. I kept my voice steady even though inside I felt nothing but ice. Evan Cross is a professional con man. He targeted you, Audrey. Saw your vulnerability, your desperation, and he exploited it. Used you to access my money. Used your mother's loneliness to maintain his cover. The same way he's been using Megan and Noah. No. Audrey's voice was muffled by her hands. No, he wouldn't. He would. And he did. I turned to Megan. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Megan wiped her eyes, straightening her spine. I'm glad I know. Better late than never. She looked at Evan with something that might have been pity. Our marriage is over. I'll file for divorce tomorrow. Megan, please. Evan finally found his voice desperate and pleading. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't you dare speak to me right now. Not after this. Not after you used our son's tuition money. Her voice broke. Our child. How could you? Audrey looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Sorry isn't enough, Audrey. Austin Mercer took everything from me. $85,000. I was desperate. I had nothing. Evan said he'd help me. And you chose to trust a stranger over your own father. I had to force the next words out past the lump in my throat. You chose money over family. You chose to steal from me. To change my life insurance policy. To cut my brake lines. To poison my coffee. She sobbed harder but said nothing. What could she say? Yet you chose, I repeated, to try to end my life. Betty finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Joseph, please. I looked at her, this woman I'd been married to for 24 years. This woman who'd sat in that same chair for thousands of dinners. Who'd raised our daughter. Who'd stood beside me at weddings and funerals and every moment in between. You enabled all of it, I said quietly. You saw what was happening. You heard the conversations. You knew about the money. And you said nothing. I didn't think. She stopped, started again. I thought it was just a loan that was never discussed with me, that I never agreed to. I shook my head. You're as guilty as they are. The room fell silent again, except for Audrey's muffled sobs and Noah's distant laughter from the kitchen as Paw Patrol played on. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Detective Warren, you can come in now. The front door opened again, this time with purpose, with authority. 2 uniformed police officers entered first, their hands resting on their belts. Behind them came a woman in her 40s wearing a detective's badge clipped to her belt. Mr. Barrett. Detective Warren nodded to me, all business. We heard everything through the wire. I touched the small recording device clipped inside my shirt collar. You have all the evidence, every word, crystal clear. She turned to face Audrey and Evan, her expression professional and cold. Audrey Barrett and Evan Cross, you're both under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to cause serious bodily harm. She began reading them their Miranda rights in a steady, practiced voice. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Audrey stood on shaking legs as a uniformed officer moved behind her with handcuffs. The metallic click echoed through the room. Dad, please! Audrey's voice rose to a scream. Don't do this. Please, I'm your daughter. I turned away. Couldn't watch. Couldn't bear to see the handcuffs on her wrists. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. The second officer cuffed Evan, who went quietly, his face blank, all the charm and confidence drained away, leaving only empty shell. They led Audrey toward the door. She twisted in the officer's grip, looking back at me one final time. Daddy, she whispered. She hadn't called me that since she was 10 years old. But I said nothing. Just watched as they guided her out the door and into the waiting police car. Through the dining room windows, red and blue lights flashed rhythmically, painting the walls in alternating colors like a twisted disco. Betty sat at the dining table, completely collapsed, her whole body shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. Megan held Noah, who'd come running from the kitchen when he heard the commotion. The boy's small face confused and frightened, tears starting to stream down his cheeks as he watched his father being led away in handcuffs. "Mommy, why are they taking Daddy? What did Daddy do?" Megan couldn't answer, just held him tighter. And I stood alone in the center of the dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of everything I'd ever built. The overturned chair, the scattered documents, the cold dinner no one had eaten, the half-empty wine glasses, the family that had just been destroyed beyond repair. Justice had been served, but the price was everything I'd ever loved. Through the window, I watched the police cars pull away, their lights fading into the distance. Betty sobbed. Noah cried for his father. Megan stared at nothing. And I stood in the ruins of my life, wondering if this was what victory was supposed to feel like. The weeks following the arrests were a blur of lawyers, courtrooms, and media attention I never wanted. Week 1 hit like a sledgehammer. I spent 8 hours at the police station giving my full statement. Every detail, every recording, every document. The detectives were thorough, methodical. By the time I walked out, the sky had gone dark and my voice was hoarse. Audrey and Evan were denied bail. Flight risk, the judge said, given the offshore accounts and evidence of planning. They'd remain in custody until trial. Betty was questioned for hours, but she cooperated, fully turned over everything she knew. 2 days later, she moved out of our house and went to stay with her sister across town. The media descended. Local father exposes daughter's elaborate theft plot. My phone rang constantly, reporters concerned, friends, complete strangers wanting to know details. I changed my number, started living like a ghost in my own life. Benjamin handled the press. Mr. Barrett requests privacy during this difficult time, but privacy meant being alone in that empty house, walking through rooms that suddenly felt too large, too quiet. I found myself standing in Audrey's bedroom one afternoon, looking at her high school trophies, her graduation photos, the collage of memories on her wall. Where did I go wrong? The trial preparation consumed weeks 2 through 8. The prosecutors, led by Assistant District Attorney Sarah Mitchell, a woman with 20 years of experience and a reputation for being relentless, built their case methodically. Defense attorneys tried negotiating plea bargains. Benjamin sat across from me in his office. They're offering a deal. Audrey could plead guilty to lesser charges. 3 years instead of 10. No deals. Aunt Joseph, seeing Audrey on the witness stand is going to be painful. I need the truth on record. All of it. Everything that happened. No shortcuts. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Full trial it is. The pre-trial hearings were brutal. Audrey's defense argued she'd been manipulated. My client is a victim of psychological abuse and gaslighting by Evan Cross. Evan's defense claimed insufficient evidence. There's no physical proof our client directly attempted to cause harm. But the most painful moment came when Betty took the stand, testifying for the prosecution. Against our daughter. So Audrey told me Joseph wouldn't notice the missing money, Betty said, voice shaking. She said he deserved what was happening to him. Megan filed for divorce from Evan. When she testified, her voice was steady despite tears. He told me he was working late, training clients. Really, he was with Audrey. March 15th. The trial began. The courtroom was packed. Media in the gallery. Public spectators. People I'd known for years watching as my private devastation became public record. Day 2, I took the stand. 4 hours of testimony. I described discovering the theft in Salem, the recordings, the brake failure on Interstate 5, the sedatives in my coffee. The cross-examination was savage. Mr. Barrett, were you an emotionally distant father? I worked hard to provide for my family, but did you ever tell Audrey you loved her? Every day of her life. Yet she felt desperate enough to steal from you. Why do you think that is? I had no answer that would satisfy them. Day 5. Audrey took the stand. She was sobbing before the prosecutor even asked the first question. Her voice shook as she spoke. I made terrible mistakes. I was drowning in debt, $85,000. Austin Mercer had scammed me, and I was desperate. Evan promised to help. I trusted him. The prosecutor's voice was cold. Did you put sedatives in your father's coffee on March 10th? Long silence. The entire courtroom waited. Yes. Did you know that dosage could end his life? Another pause, then barely a whisper. Yes. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. The judge had to call for order. March 28th. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Evan Cross guilty on all counts. 12 years in prison for fraud conspiracy violations related to bigamy and conspiracy to cause harm. Audrey Barrett guilty on all counts. 8 years in prison for fraud conspiracy and conspiracy to cause harm. Betty Barrett, having pleaded guilty to lesser charges and cooperated with the prosecution, received 3 years probation and 500 hours of community service. As the guards led Audrey away in handcuffs, she looked at me one final time. Her eyes were empty, hollow. The daughter I'd raised, the girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories, was gone. In her place stood a stranger who'd tried to take everything from me, including my life. I walked out of the courthouse into Portland's gray drizzle. Benjamin walked beside me, holding an umbrella over both our heads. It's over, he said. But I knew better. The legal battle was over. The emotional battle was just beginning. Dr. Helen Carver's office became my sanctuary. Twice a week I sat in that chair and tried to piece myself back together. April, my first session. The office was nothing like I'd expected. Soft lighting filtered through sheer curtains. Comfortable chairs instead of a clinical couch. Plants everywhere, ferns and succulents that somehow made the space feel alive. Dr. Carver was 48 with warm eyes that seemed to see through every defense I'd built. Joseph, what brings you here? I stared at my hands. I don't know how to feel anymore. My daughter tried to end my life. My wife helped her steal from me. I got justice in court, but I don't feel better. Justice and healing are different things, she said gently. Justice is external, what happens in courtrooms. Healing is internal, what happens in here. She touched her chest. In the heart. How do I heal from this? By allowing yourself to feel everything. The anger, the grief, the betrayal, all of it. And eventually, by choosing peace over bitterness. I thought that sounded impossible. The sessions continued. Twice a week, Tuesday and Friday afternoons, I sat in that chair and slowly began to unpack 24 years of my life. Week 3, I broke down completely. Where did I fail as a father? Dr. Carver leaned forward. Joseph, you didn't fail. Audrey made choices, bad choices, terrible choices. But they were her choices, not yours. But I must have done something wrong. Good parents raise children who are still human, who still have free will, who can still make devastating mistakes. Her voice was firm. You can't control another person's choices, not even your child's. Week 6, we talked about Betty. 24 years. Was any of it real? Some of it was real, Dr. Carver said. People are complex, Joseph. Betty loved you once. I believe that. Then things changed. Maybe she changed. Maybe the marriage changed. That doesn't erase the good years. It just means the story ended differently than you thought it would. In May, she suggested I join a support group. Survivors of family fraud. Wednesday evenings in a church basement across town. I walked in, nervous, not knowing what to expect. 12 people sat in a circle, men and women, young and old, all carrying the weight of family betrayal. The facilitator smiled. Welcome, everyone. Who wants to share first? I just listened that first night, a man in his 50s. My brother stole my inheritance. Cleaned out my mother's accounts before she died. We haven't spoken in 5 years. A woman in her 60s. My son forged my signature and took my house. I'm living with my daughter now. A younger man, maybe 30. My wife and her boyfriend drained our accounts while I was deployed overseas. Came home to nothing. Each story was different, but the pain underneath was the same. I'm not alone. By the 3rd week, I shared my story. Kept it brief: daughter theft, attempted harm, trial, prison. The group nodded. They understood without me having to explain. A woman named Patricia spoke up. The hardest part isn't the money, is it? No. It's the trust you'll never get back. Exactly. August arrived with an unexpected clarity. I woke up one Saturday morning and knew what I needed to do. I needed to see Audrey, face to face. I called Benjamin. Can you arrange a prison visit? Are you sure, Joseph, this could be incredibly painful? I need closure for myself. The visit was approved for the following Saturday. August 12th, 2 in the afternoon. I drove south to Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. 45 minutes through farmland and small towns. My hands shook on the steering wheel. What will I say? The security was thorough. Metal detectors. ID verification. Rules about what I could and couldn't bring. The visitation room was exactly what I'd imagined: gray walls, plastic chairs, guards watching everything. A glass partition separated visitors from inmates. I sat down and waited. The door on the other side opened. Audrey walked in wearing a prison uniform. She'd lost weight. Her hair was pulled back simply. No makeup. She looked younger, more like the daughter I remembered. She sat down across from me. We picked up phones on either side of the glass. Long silence. Dad! Her voice broke immediately. Tears streamed down her face. Hello, Audrey. I'm so sorry. So sorry. I know. I was scared. Stupid. Evan made me believe. Evan didn't make you do anything. I interrupted. You made choices, Audrey. Your choices. I know. She was sobbing now. I'll regret it every day for the rest of my life. I looked at my daughter through that glass partition. Practiced the words I'd rehearsed with Dr. Carver for weeks. Audrey, I forgive you. She collapsed forward, sobbing harder. But I wasn't finished. I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was right. It doesn't mean I'll forget. It doesn't mean you won't serve your sentence. It means I'm choosing to release the hatred that's been destroying me from the inside. Her hand pressed against the glass. You took my money, my trust, my family. But you can't take my ability to move forward. That's mine. And I'm taking it back. I stood up. Dad, please don't go. But I hung up the phone and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear her crying. Could see her in my peripheral vision, hand still pressed against the glass. But I kept walking, because forgiveness wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. The sunrise over the Willamette River had never looked more beautiful. I stood at Tom McCall Waterfront Park at 6:30 a.m. watching the first light of October paint the water gold and orange. The autumn leaves drifted down from the trees lining the riverbank, landing softly on the path where I'd just finished my morning run. My breath came steady, and even no longer the shallow, panicked breathing of a year ago. Exactly 1 year ago today, I discovered the betrayal that shattered my family. Exactly 1 year ago today, I began the journey from blind trust to devastating truth. The anniversary wasn't lost on me. I'd marked it deliberately, choosing to spend this morning here by the river rather than hiding from the memory. A year changes everything. A year changes nothing. Both statements felt true. The changes. I sold the house in West Hills 3 months after the trial. I couldn't live there anymore. Not in the dining room where I'd confronted them. Not in the kitchen where Audrey had poisoned my coffee. Not in the bedroom where I'd lain awake night after night, wondering if my family was planning my death. The house sold quickly. I didn't look back when I handed over the keys. My new apartment in the Pearl District was smaller, simpler, and entirely mine. No ghosts, no memories. Just clean white walls and windows that faced east, letting in the morning sun. I kept it minimal: a couch, a bed, a small desk where I worked. I didn't need much anymore. The things I'd once thought mattered: the big house, the expensive furniture, the perfect family photos, none of it mattered now. I transitioned to part-time consulting and financial advisory work. I still had clients who trusted me, who valued my expertise. But I no longer worked 60-hour weeks. I no longer sacrificed weekends and holidays. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. All the money in the world means nothing if you lose yourself in the process. Instead, I started volunteering. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, I taught a free course at Portland Community College, protecting yourself from financial fraud, even from family. The first night, 12 people showed up. By the third week, the room was packed with 40 students. Young people trying to navigate their first credit cards, immigrants learning the American financial system, elderly folks who'd been scammed by their own children or caregivers. I saw myself in each of them: the vulnerability, the desire to trust, the fear of what might happen if they didn't protect themselves. I shared my story openly, not for sympathy, but for education. If my pain could prevent even one person from going through what I'd endured, it was worth it. Last month, a woman in her 70s approached me after class with tears in her eyes. Her son had been forging checks from her account for 3 years. She'd suspected, but didn't want to believe it. My class gave her the courage to report him. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for saving what's left of my life." I thought about that hug often. It reminded me why I kept teaching, why I kept showing up. Beyond the classroom, I'd also started mentoring young professionals through a local nonprofit. Every Saturday morning, I met with 2 or 3 mentees at a coffee shop downtown, helping them navigate career decisions, financial planning, and life choices. Most of them were in their 20s, around Audrey's age. I tried not to think too hard about that parallel, but it was there. Perhaps helping them was my way of reclaiming what I'd lost with my daughter. Perhaps it was just the right thing to do. The connections. My phone buzzed as I walked away from the riverbank. A text from Megan Cross. "Noah asked me this morning if the cookie man would visit again. He misses you." I smiled. Megan and I had stayed in touch. She divorced Evan immediately after his sentencing and moved back to her parents' house in Vancouver with Noah. We'd met for coffee twice, once in January, once in June. Both times I brought cookies for Noah, who'd remembered me as the nice man with the cookies from that awful night. Last month, I'd anonymously sent a $500 gift card to Megan with a note, "For Noah's future," from a friend. She'd texted me immediately, somehow knowing it was me. I didn't confirm or deny it. Some kindnesses were better left anonymous. I texted back, "Tell him the cookie man says hello. Maybe we can meet for hot chocolate soon." Betty had written to me 3 months ago a short, careful letter expressing regret and asking if we could talk. I hadn't replied yet. I wasn't sure I ever would. Dr. Carver said it was okay to not forgive everyone, to draw boundaries, even in healing. Betty had played her role in the betrayal, even if she'd been manipulated. I wasn't ready to cross that bridge yet. Maybe I never would be. Audrey's letters arrived monthly like clockwork. I hadn't opened a single one. They sat in a shoebox in my closet, unopened and unread. Benjamin had asked me once if I planned to visit her or respond. I told him honestly, not yet. Maybe never. I don't know. Dr. Carver said that was okay too. The final session. Yesterday had been my final scheduled therapy session with Dr. Carver. We'd met twice a week for 8 months, then once a week for the past 4 months. She'd guided me through the worst of the trauma, the rage, the guilt, the grief. "Do you remember the first day you came in?" she'd asked yesterday, her warm eyes studying me carefully. I nodded. I could barely sit still. I kept waiting for the next betrayal, the next attack. I thought everyone was lying to me, and now, Now. I paused, searching for the right words. Now I wake up, and the first thing I think about isn't whether someone is trying to hurt me. That's progress. Dr. Carver smiled. That's enormous progress, Joseph. Healing isn't about forgetting or pretending it didn't happen. It's about learning to live again, despite what happened. You're doing that. I'd left her office feeling lighter than I had in months. The voice memo. This morning after my run, I'd sat on a bench by the river and recorded a voice memo on my phone. Not for anyone else, just for me. And maybe for others like me if I ever found the courage to share it publicly. October, 1 year later. My name is Joseph Barrett. A year ago, my wife and daughter stole over $400,000 from me. My daughter tried to poison me. They conspired with a con man to take everything I had, including my life. I survived. I want you to know that if you're going through something similar, if someone you love has betrayed you, stolen from you, tried to destroy you, you can survive too. You will survive. Healing isn't linear. Some days are harder than others. Some days you'll wake up and forget for a moment what happened. Then you'll remember, and the weight will crash down again. That's okay. That's part of the process. I'm not telling you to forgive. Forgiveness is personal. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what they did. It's about choosing your own peace over their hold on you. It's about releasing the poison they left inside you. I've forgiven some people. Others I haven't. Maybe I never will. And that's okay too. What matters is this: I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm teaching, mentoring, helping others. I'm learning to trust again, carefully, cautiously, but genuinely. You can do this. You can rebuild. It won't look the same as before, but it can be good. It can even be beautiful. This is my story. Maybe one day I'll share it. Maybe it will help someone else find their way out of the darkness. For now, I'm choosing to live. I'm choosing hope. I'm choosing to believe that despite everything, there is still good in this world, and I can be part of it. My name is Joseph Barrett, and today I'm okay. I saved the recording and titled it, My Story, October. The ending. I walked into my favorite coffee shop near the Pearl District apartment. The barista, a young woman named Sophie, greeted me with a warm smile. The usual Mr. Barrett. Just Joseph, I corrected, gently smiling back. And yes, please. As she prepared my coffee, I noticed an older gentleman at a corner table fumbling with his phone and looking frustrated. Without thinking, I approached. Need a hand with that? He looked up, surprised, then grateful. I'm trying to set up mobile banking, but I can't figure out this app. I pulled up a chair. Let me show you. And here's a tip: always enable two-factor authentication. It'll protect you from fraud. 20 minutes later, he had everything set up. He thanked me profusely, offering to buy my coffee. I declined politely. Just pass it forward, I said. Help someone else when you can. Sophie handed me my coffee with a note scribbled on the cup. You're a good person. Don't forget that. I looked up at her, surprised. She just winked and moved on to the next customer. I walked out into the October morning, coffee in hand, and paused to look around. The leaves were falling. The river sparkled in the distance. Joggers and cyclists passed by, living their lives, pursuing their happiness. For the first time in a year, I felt it: real, genuine happiness. Not the fragile hope I'd clung to in the early months, but something deeper, something earned. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I'd ever fully trust again, if I'd ever rebuild a family, if I'd ever stop carrying the scars of betrayal. But I knew this: I was still here. I was still fighting. I was still choosing to believe in goodness even after everything. And that was enough. That was more than enough. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled at the words on the cup. You're a good person. Maybe I was. Maybe despite everything, I still was. The morning sun warmed my face as I walked home. It was going to be a beautiful day. And to you listening to this family story, remember this. I thought I knew my family. I thought 24 years of marriage and raising a daughter meant something. I thought trust was earned through time, through sacrifice, through love. I was wrong. God gave me eyes, but I chose to be blind. God gave me wisdom, but I chose to ignore the warning signs. God gave me a second chance when my brakes failed, when the poison didn't kill me, and I finally listened. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you've lost $400,000 and nearly your life to see the truth. Don't confuse love with blindness. Don't mistake loyalty for stupidity. This family story taught me that the people closest to you can hurt you the most, not because they're strangers, but because you gave them the keys to your life. You opened every door, you trusted without verifying, and they walked right in and took everything. What I did wasn't about anger. It was about dad revenge, yes, but the right kind. It was about justice. It was about refusing to be a victim. My dad revenge meant standing up and saying no more. But here's the truth about dad revenge: it doesn't heal you. Justice doesn't bring back what you lost. It just closes the chapter so you can finally start a new one. So check your bank accounts. Watch for the warning signs. Trust, yes, but verify. Love your family, but protect yourself. And when God shows you the truth, no matter how painful, have the courage to face it. That's my advice. That's what this family story cost me to learn. Now it's your turn to share. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close? How did you handle it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps me continue sharing these difficult but important stories. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It means more than you know. Before you go, please note that upcoming stories may contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better match your preferences. Take care of yourself and your finances. This is Joseph Barrett signing off.